Hi, I'm Paul Davis from Barefoot Athlete, and I'm going to talk in this video about the Merrell trail glove that we just received stock of. So the first thing I want to say is I don't usually show the box, but what is unusual here is we've got a shoe that has a very clear message warning customers they need to be quite careful at transitioning into a barefoot shoe and take care about the way we do that. So I think that's quite interesting because I think that's the first shoe I've seen that gives that sort of responsible advice. So let me get the shoe out now and we'll talk about the shoe in detail. Now, in my opinion, one of the particular reasons why this shoe is interesting is it's made by Merrell. Now, up to now, most barefoot-oriented shoes have been made by fairly small companies, niche players. Merrell is quite unusual in that sense because they're a really large first-league shoe manufacturer who, rather than staying completely conservative like many of their competitors, have really endorsed the barefoot concept with complete integrity here because this is a serious barefoot shoe. In particular because it's got a zero heel differential, it's got a very flexible sole and with not that much cushioning in. But also what makes this shoe particularly interesting is that it's got a Vibram sole and therefore has quite a bit in common with the Vibram 5 fingers. So let's talk a bit about that sole. So here we have the trail glove and a pair of 5 fingers along each side each other. So let's talk about some of the ways in which they're similar and also some of the difference. So in particular, the things they have in common are they use the Vibram material, which is a shock-absorbing material, which basically protects your feet from the shock of running on the surface. What they also have in common is a relatively narrow heel, an instep, but I'm going to talk a bit more about that later, and then a broad front to the shoe. Where they particularly differ is that the trail glove has got much more of a tread to it. In that sense it lends itself more to running off-road, whereas the 5 fingers here has got a relatively smooth lower surface, albeit with these micro cuts in order to improve grip. What I would say though is that the trail glove, having run for a short distance in them, definitely gives the impression of being a more cushioned shoe than the 5 fingers, and with the 5 fingers it's nearer akin to wearing with no shoes, whereas the trail glove is going to be something that's going to be much more familiar to someone used to running in shoes, who's going to feel much more that they're in a conventional shoe, albeit one with a zero differential. Now the other thing I want to talk a bit about is this raised instep, because on the 5 fingers the sole is very flexible, and therefore once you are standing in the shoe bends here and you're not that conscious of the instep. The trail glove has got a much firmer sole than the 5 fingers, and as a result of that you're very conscious of this instep. Now to someone used to running in conventional running shoes, that's going to feel quite familiar to them and they're going to feel very at ease in these shoes. But for someone who's a hardened barefoot runner who's been doing a lot of it, they would actually find that instep quite intrusive in comparison with the 5 fingers, where they'd not notice it was there at all. If we move round to the top of the shoe, then some of the things I like is the fact you've got a nice wide toe box, which enables your toes to splay nicely and have a good barefoot experience. We've also got an excellent protective area around here to protect your toes. The laces are quite interesting in that the laces actually pull on these yellow strips, which in turn are actually attached across the central section here. I'd now like to give you an indication of how flexible the sole is, and I always like to see what it's like to actually roll the shoe up. So by the standards of any conventional running shoe, that's extremely flexible. But having said that, it's still not quite as flexible as a 5 fingers. So if I show you here the same with a pair of 5 fingers, then you can still roll them up, but to a greater extent with less resistance. So again, if you're a purist, this is the more flexible sole, but for anybody new to barefoot running, the trail glove is easily flexible enough. If we move on to the upper section, then I think one of the most attractive things about this shoe for many people is that it looks like a conventional running shoe. So whereas something like a Terraplane Evo or a Vibram 5 fingers is going to cause a bit of comment for many people if they run with them, and they may not like that, the attraction with these is this looks like a conventional pair of shoes, so you can run with these and you're not going to have people saying, what on earth have you got on your feet? And for some people that's going to be quite important. Now in terms of some of the things I like about this shoe, we've got some excellent protection around here for the toe. On the inside there is no removable insert with extra cushioning, and again that's going to be something that's quite attractive in terms of giving the maximum information on the running surface back to the runner. So what's it like wearing these shoes? Well, I think as soon as you put these shoes on, then there's two things that come to mind. The first is an awareness of that raised instep, and the second is a feeling that there's somewhat more cushioning in these shoes than you would find in a pair of Terraplaner Evos or Vibram Five Fingers. Now, my personal opinion is that for anybody who's starting out with forefoot running and interested in trying out barefoot running, they're going to feel extremely comfortable with these shoes. That raised instep is going to feel familiar, and the degree of cushioning in them is going to make them feel super comfortable and very nice shoes to wear right from the off. Having said that though, if someone's an experienced barefoot runner and they've been running in Terraplaner Evos or Vibram Five Fingers, then they'll have been used to a shoe that generally comes very close to mimicking a barefoot experience. And that's not what these shoes do. These shoes are not intended to give the impression that you're running with no shoes on at all. They're not for a barefoot experience. In my opinion, what they're for is somebody who wants to give up on heel striking, who wants to move across to forefoot striking and find an easier and a more efficient way of running. And for someone looking to do that, in my opinion, these shoes are absolutely superb. So in summary, I think these shoes are going to be really successful. One of the reasons for that is because they come from a recognised brand that people can feel comfortable with. But I also think they make an absolutely superb shoe for someone who's starting their journey away from conventional shoes and wants to start forefoot striking. And I think they'll do it extremely well in that sector. I think for the hardened barefoot athlete, then I think these shoes are also interesting as a secondary shoe for off-road purposes, for running on trails, because that extra cushioning and the extra grip on the sole means that if you're running on a track with stones and sharp objects and things, then in my opinion this can be a much better bet for you than a full-on barefoot shoe.